host private cooking classes in Barcelona. Last April, an American tourist insisted she'd never leave Spain because everyone here is so friendly. 2 hours later, she asked me why the dinner party felt hostile. She'd done everything right back in Seattle. She brought wine. She arrived early. She helped herself to more. My other guests were avoiding eye contact with her. I run a small apartment kitchen, so I'd seen enough American confusion by then to fill a guidebook, but watching her reach across the table for the wine bottle while 3 Catalans froze mid-conversation taught me something new. Cultural gaps aren't about malice. They're about certainty. She believed her gestures showed good manners. Everyone else saw someone broadcasting that our customs meant nothing. I told her at the end that touching wine bottles wasn't her job as a guest. She laughed and said, "But I was being helpful." Then she asked if I thought Europeans were just really controlling about alcohol. The next week, another American grabbed bread before the host started eating. The week after that, someone asked for ketchup with paella. Each time, the same confidence. Each time, the same damage. Here's what's actually happening at those dinner tables, told by the people who live there. I work the front desk at a guest house in Bruges. An American couple checked in last autumn and asked where they could find dinner at 5:30. I suggested they wait until 7 when restaurants actually open. The husband said, "We eat early back home because we're not lazy." They came back 90 minutes later complaining that nobody wanted to serve them. They'd knocked on restaurant doors, tried to sweet-talk kitchen staff, even offered extra money to a chef loading supplies. One place let them sit at the bar with olives and water. They called it the rudest service in Europe. When I explained that dinner doesn't start until 8 or 9 in Belgium, and that kitchens prep during the afternoon, the wife interrupted to say Americans value efficiency and that Europeans should adjust their schedules for international guests. She then mentioned something about the Marshall Plan. The husband nodded like he'd made a legal argument. I smiled and recommended McDonald's near the train station. My sister runs a small hotel outside Krakow. An American guest asked her why Polish people were so cold during a group dinner. He'd tried making conversation with everyone at his table, asked about their jobs, their families, their politics. Nobody responded warmly. He thought maybe it was anti-American sentiment. My sister explained that Polish dinner etiquette requires letting the host lead conversation topics and that guests don't interview each other like a networking event. He said, "That's not conversation, that's a dictatorship." He pulled out his phone and showed her an article about American communication styles being more open and democratic. He read a section aloud that said Americans create inclusive environments by asking questions. My sister asked if he'd noticed people's answers getting shorter. He said yes, which proved they weren't good conversationalists. The next night, he ate alone in his room. He told her at checkout that Poland wasn't as friendly as advertised. I manage a villa rental service in Tuscany. An American family stayed for a week last June. On their first night, they invited the neighbors for dinner to break the ice and asked everyone to bring a dish. The neighbors showed up with wine and small gifts, confused about the food request. The Americans had set out a casserole, store-bought pasta salad, and paper plates. They asked people to serve themselves from the kitchen counter. One neighbor whispered to me later that she didn't understand if it was a real dinner or a children's birthday party. The mother told me the next day that Italians were really standoffish about potlucks. She said she'd read that Europeans love communal dining, so she'd organized it exactly like her Seattle neighborhood does. When I explained that Italian dinner invitations mean the host provides everything and that buffet-style service isn't standard, she said that sounded exhausting and undemocratic. She mentioned something about how Americans invented the modern dinner party. For the rest of the week, the neighbors waved politely but never came back. I work at a cultural center in Athens that hosts international exchanges. An American volunteer joined us for a formal dinner last March honoring a retiring professor. When the host stood to make a toast, the American interrupted to say she wanted to add something. She talked for 3 minutes about leadership and inspiration, referencing people nobody knew, then raised her glass and drank. The room went silent. She looked around, smiled, and said, "See? That's how you celebrate someone." Later, she asked me why Greeks seemed so formal and uncomfortable with emotions. I explained that interrupting a host's toast is considered deeply disrespectful, and that toasts follow a specific structure where only the person being honored stays silent. She said, "That's so hierarchical. In America, anyone can speak up because we value all voices equally." She showed me her phone, where she'd screenshot a Forbes article about American workplace culture being more egalitarian. She said she was just bringing that energy to Greece. The professor never spoke to her again. I wait tables at a bistro in Lyon. An American woman ordered a salad and asked for the dressing on the side. I told her it comes tossed. She said she'd tip extra if I brought it separately. I explained we don't alter dishes. She raised her voice and said, "The customer is always right. That's like a universal rule." She pulled out her phone and showed me a Yelp review strategy guide about how American restaurants accommodate requests. She said French service was outdated and inflexible, and that back in Boston, servers fall over themselves to customize orders. I brought her salad as prepared. She picked at it, left most of it, and wrote on the receipt, "Rude service. Learn from America." My manager found the note later. He shrugged and said at least she didn't ask for ranch dressing. The next week, another American asked for ice in her wine. When I said no, she told me France would get more tourists if we modernized. My cousin owns a tapas bar in Seville. An American couple came in during lunch service last April and asked why their food was taking so long. I told them tapas arrive in stages, not all at once. The husband said, "We're hungry now. Just bring everything." I explained that spacing dishes is how tapas works. He said that made no sense from a business perspective and that American restaurants maximize efficiency by bringing everything together. He pulled out his phone and showed me a restaurant management blog post about table turnover. He said Spain was leaving money on the table with its weird pacing rules. His wife nodded and mentioned something about GDP. When their patatas bravas finally arrived, they'd already paid and left. They wrote a Google review saying Spanish service is designed to waste tourist time. My cousin printed it and hung it in the kitchen. We laugh every time someone asks why their meal isn't instant. I run a family restaurant outside Vienna. An American group asked for separate checks after a 2-hour dinner. I said we don't split bills. One man said, "Why not? You have a computer, right?" He explained that American restaurants use software that divides checks instantly and that Austria should invest in modern technology. He literally said, "This is why America leads in innovation." Another person in his group suggested I just do the math manually. I brought one bill. They argued for 15 minutes about who ordered what, trying to calculate euros into dollars on their phones. Finally, one person paid and told the others to Venmo him. Before leaving, the first man asked if Austria's backward payment systems were due to socialism. I told him we prefer not to treat friends like separate business transactions. He said that explained why European startups fail. The next morning, they left a review saying Austrian restaurants punish groups for dining together. I work at a cafe in Amsterdam. An American woman ordered coffee and asked where the cream and sugar were. I brought the coffee as served. She said, "No, I need cream and sugar." I told her we don't provide those. She stared at me like I'd refused to sell her oxygen. She said, "It's coffee. Everyone puts cream and sugar in coffee. That's literally the definition of coffee." She showed me a Starbucks app on her phone to prove that coffee requires customization. She said Dutch coffee culture was pretentious and that Americans had figured out that people like choices. I explained that our coffee is meant to be tasted as roasted. She said that was elitist and that consumer choice was a democratic value. She mentioned something about free markets. She left without drinking it. A week later, another American asked why we didn't have pumpkin spice flavor. When I said we serve coffee, not dessert, she said Amsterdam was stuck in the past. I drive a taxi in Lisbon. An American tourist got in last May and asked why Portuguese people don't speak English. I said many do. He said, but not everyone, which is crazy for a tourist city. He explained that English is the global language and that Portugal should require it in schools better. He said in America, everyone speaks English, which makes tourism easier. I asked if Americans learn Portuguese before visiting Portugal. He said that was different because English is international. He pulled out his phone and read statistics about English being the language of business. He said Portugal was limiting its economic growth by not being more accommodating. When we arrived at his hotel, he paid in dollars. I handed them back and said I needed euros. He said dollars should be accepted everywhere because of the strength of the American economy. He mentioned something about reserve currencies. I waited while he found a currency exchange. He complained the entire time that Europe makes travel unnecessarily difficult. I work at a thermal spa in Budapest. An American man arrived last winter for a couple's massage appointment. When I showed him to the changing area, he asked where the private rooms were. I explained we have communal changing spaces separated by gender. He said, that's a privacy violation. In America, everyone gets their own space. He refused to change and demanded a private room. I told him we don't have individual changing rooms because that's not how Hungarian spas work. He pulled out his phone and showed me an American spa website with private suite. He said Hungary was behind on basic customer service standards and that communal nudity was inappropriate in modern society. He explained that Americans value personal privacy as a fundamental right. He mentioned something about the Constitution. His wife tried to calm him down. He said, no, this is about principles. He demanded to speak with management about installing private changing rooms. I told him that would require rebuilding a 100-year-old bathhouse. He said that's what renovation loans are for. They left without getting their massage. He wrote a review saying Hungarian spas violate international privacy standard. I manage a mountain lodge in the Swiss Alps. An American family arrived last December and asked why we don't have ice machines on every floor. The father said, ice is basic hospitality. Every hotel in America has it. I explained that Europeans don't typically use ice in drink. He said that was a health issue because room temperature water breeds bacteria. He pulled out his phone and showed me a blog post about optimal water temperature for hydration. He said Americans had figured out that cold water is healthier and that Swiss hotels should adopt this standard. I offered to bring ice from the kitchen. He said that missed the point and that we should install machines for convenience. He explained that American hotels understand customer expectations better than European ones. His teenage son suggested that Switzerland was just old-fashioned. The father nodded and mentioned something about innovation. For the rest of their stay, they filled their bathtub with snow from outside to cool their drink. Before checkout, he asked if Switzerland's lack of ice machines was due to environmental regulations. I said we just don't find ice necessary. He said that explained why European beverages taste warm. My brother works at a train station in Prague. An American couple bought tickets to Bratislava and were shocked it was in Slovakia, not Austria. They insisted the ticket agent had confused the cities. The husband said, we specifically said we wanted to see the Sound of Music filming locations. The agent explained that Salzburg, Austria, which is different from Bratislava, Slovakia, which is different from Prague, Czech Republic. The wife said, "This is why Europe needs clearer borders. In America, states are straightforward." She pulled out her phone and showed a map where she'd assumed all Central European cities were interchangeable. She said American geography education prepares people for travel better than whatever Europeans learn. The husband suggested that European tourism boards create a simplified map for Americans. They demanded a refund. When told no, they got on the train to Bratislava anyway, then wrote a TripAdvisor review saying Prague misrepresents its proximity to Austrian landmarks. My brother still has their complaint printed in the break room. I work security at a museum in Copenhagen. An American visitor arrived last spring with a large backpack. I asked him to check it at the counter. He said, "Why? I'm not a criminal." I explained its museum policy for all large bags. He said that was discrimination and that in America, people are trusted until proven otherwise. He pulled out his phone and showed me the Constitution's Fourth Amendment about unreasonable searches. He said requiring bag checks violated his civil right. I told him it's to protect the art. He said, "From what? Law-abiding citizens." He explained that American museums use surveillance cameras instead of treating visitors like suspects. He said Denmark's approach was authoritarian. He mentioned something about freedom. I offered to hold his bag while he toured. He said that wasn't the point and that Denmark should modernize its security policies to respect personal liberty. He demanded to speak with the director about changing the bag policy. When I said the director was unavailable, he stood in the entrance for 20 minutes blocking other visitors, filming himself talking about Danish museum discrimination. Security eventually escorted him out. He posted the video with captions about European authoritarianism. It got 43 views. I work at a car rental office in Dublin. An American driver returned a car last August furious that Irish roads were too narrow. He said he'd nearly crashed 5 times. I asked if he'd driven on the left. He said yes, but that Irish roads were still designed wrong. He explained that American roads are wider because Americans understand traffic engineering. He said Ireland should modernize its infrastructure to accommodate normal-sized vehicles. He showed me photos of the rental car next to stone walls with 3 inches of clearance. He said this proved Irish roads were dangerous and possibly illegal by international standard. When I explained that Irish roads are centuries old and built for smaller vehicles, he said that was no excuse in the 21st century. He mentioned something about Marshall Plan funds. He demanded a refund for the substandard driving conditions. I offered him a map of highway routes. He said maps don't fix bad planning. I teach English in Stockholm. An American student asked why Swedes don't use more English words in daily conversation. He said he'd been in Stockholm for 2 weeks and people kept speaking Swedish around him. I explained that Swedish is Sweden's language. He said, "But everyone knows English, so why not just use it?" He pulled out his phone and showed me a study about Scandinavian English proficiency. He said if Swedes are fluent, they should default to English in mixed company. He explained that in America, when someone doesn't speak English, everyone just talks louder and slower until they understand. He said that's more inclusive. I asked if he'd learned any Swedish. He said, "Why would I? Everyone here speaks English." He then complained that Swedish keyboards don't have the right letters. He suggested Sweden switch to American keyboards for efficiency. The next week, he asked me why Stockholm felt cliquish. I suggested joining a Swedish class. He said that defeated the purpose of living in an English-friendly country. I teach wine pairing courses in Bordeaux. Last September, an American woman took a weekend seminar. On the final evening, we hosted a formal dinner. She poured her own wine 3 times before I could stop her. When I gently explained that guests wait for the host to serve, she laughed and said, "I was just helping." She told me California wine culture is more relaxed and that French customs felt controlling. She said Americans treat everyone as equals at the table. I asked if she'd noticed the other guests hadn't poured their own wine. She said they were probably just being polite, waiting for permission. When I said that was exactly the point, she stared at me like I'd told her the earth was flat. She said, "So you're telling me I can't pour wine at a dinner party? That's insane." Then she packed her bag and left early. She sent an email later saying French wine culture was gatekeeping. She gave the seminar 2 stars because the instruction was culturally rigid. I forwarded it to my sommelier. He framed it,